saw the preview for this week's episode and how big the kids were already, I was like, maybe this show finally is moving a little bit too fast. But then we officially met Aemond, and I was like, this is fine. I mean, the only actor that I think stands out and is ridiculous is that Sir Criston Cole still looks exactly the same. Like, you can't even put some gray or a streak of white in his hair. It's ridiculous. But otherwise, I'm totally buying it. It's fine. I mean, I guess how would you show white in the hair of a Targaryen? But, Daemon also looks exactly the same. It's a little weird in some places, but these new kid characters are so awesome. I hope they stick around for a while and they don't get swapped out soon as well. I very much like these choices. I think, Jacaerys might be a little bit young and he might have to be swapped out. But I think we're pretty set for most of them. Don't swap out Aemond. I'm a big fan. I think it's Ewan Mitchell, and I think not only do I see a great future for him on this franchise, but I think another film franchise is going to. I would be trying to pick him up pretty fast for one of the big ones like Marvel or DC. Now, I think I particularly like Aemond because that's the look I tried to at least have when I was in high school and college. I couldn't get my hair that straight. I am in awe of his straightening technique, like silk. I was like, do you do that yourself, Aemond? I bet you do that yourself. But I did wear all black a lot of the time, including leather boots and a leather jacket that tied at the waist. And I always I felt pretty cool, and I like that look. And I see it on Aemond, and I'm like, it is a good look. I think he's working that eye patch. And talk about the injustice of being second born. What a total joke Egon has turned out to be, while Aemond is perfection. I mean, I've not seen this injustice so well personified until now. When he addressed his cousins in the crowd, that was amazing. Without giving away that he had seen them, it showed that he was not just a skilled fighter, but a cunning one. Somebody to look out for. It was almost Batman-like. With DC, except for the Matt Reeves movie, not really at the place that it should be, Game of Thrones is really filling that need for us to balance out the lighter Marvel content, in my opinion, in fandom. But also it shows that I think he wanted to prove that eye patch is not holding him back at all. He still sees everything. I think that eye patch motivates him. I think that eye patch, along with Vhagar, is some of the best stuff that ever happened to Aemond. I can't wait to see him on Vhagar now. It's going to be amazing. And I know some of the scenes that we have in store for us, and they are going to be amazing. I think Aemond is enamored by Daemon. I think he's like, that's the model. A fellow second son who still manages to shine and can do the things and get away with them that Aemond would like to do and get away with. The look that he gave Daemon after he cut down that Valyrian was incredible. He was like, oh, I like you. And I think that Daemon likes Aemond in spite of himself. I think he's like, wow, how did my genes wind up all the way over there? And it's funny to see them sizing each other up because, again, of what's in store for the two of them. Exciting stuff. And as an impressive new character enters our story, this new Aemond, another fascinating character departs, Viserys. He finally died, and I felt that I would feel horrible when he died, and he made me not feel bad. This was amazing. What a character Viserys turned out to be. We all thought he was such a joke and a dope when he first showed up. But wow, if Paddy Constantine doesn't win all the Best Actor awards next season, there is no justice in Hollywood. I haven't seen a slam dunk like this as to who should clearly win since Murray Bartlett on The White Lotus. You're like, this is it. This is the best performance. It's incredible. And kudos to the VFX team. Wow. There was a joke going around online that he'd soon look like Gollum at the rate he was going. But when it finally happened, it was actually quite sad. I was very moved. The cobwebs on his model city, long abandoned, that really got me, man. I was like, oh my God, this is so sad. To see him struggling and then to clearly still be lucid when he was off the milk of the poppy, the way he handled court was incredible. It was the most kingly he's ever been. Better late than never, right, Viserys? And then when the crown fell off his head, oh, talk about metaphors. And then someone came and lifted it up, and it was Daemon. Oh my God, what a reveal. I was like, oh my God, I get the feels, the emotions. I mean, sure, Daemon was also helping himself and Rhaenyra, But this was a team. This was beautiful. This was, to quote Vin Diesel, family. Echoed by that fantastic family dinner, which I'll refer to a little bit throughout this breakdown. Because, it was kind of like a commentary on this show to date and also where it's going. Nice little pause. It's so good. What a show. What a show. I actually think this might be a little bit better than Game of Thrones. It's really sophisticated. It is Game of Thrones meets The Crown. And I love The Crown, so I'm happy. How do you guys feel? Do you like this? Because it is a little bit different than Game of Thrones, the original show. Now, to me, the twist at the end with Viserys is what makes Game of Thrones a very special franchise. Despite all the goodwill that Viserys put out the entire episode, hearing his daughter's desperate midnight plea in the dark, that was incredible, that she needed his help to take the crown that he'd promised her, and he came through for her. That was like, wow, it probably made her feel so good about herself. Then he made Rhaenyra and Allison friends once more, restoring a very close and important friendship that had meant so much to both of them when they were younger. When they lifted their glasses to each other, and then when they had those toasts, and I was like, do I really believe this? When Allison didn't get up right away, I was like, Allison, you gotta make a toast too. And she did. And then when Allison said that the king and her would love to see Rhaenyra return on Dragonback, part of me was like, you're always a show-off, Rhaenyra. But I felt it was genuine, especially because Allison's life kind of sucks right now anyway. I'm sure Allison's kind of like, what was all this even for? We'll talk about Allison. But after all of that, when everything seemed to be set right, on his deathbed, he whispered to Allison that she must follow his dream. He had a premonition after all, and ensure that their idiot son Egon is king over Rhaenyra. What the heck? And I think that rings so true, that a lot of people, I'm sorry to say, especially white cis males, I'm sorry, hey, break the pattern if you don't like it. But that a lot of people are all talk when it comes to change, but then when it comes down to it, when it comes time to actually make the change, they uphold the status quo. And he did it in such a cowardly way. He's like, oh, you do it, Allison. And she's like, what? I mean, he really just said F you to all the women in his life, insisting Alicent pursue a path that will destroy her friendship with Rhaenyra forever, ripping the crown away from Rhaenyra, even though he promised it to her again and again and again. Many times, she gave him a chance to get out of it. She was like, this is hard. Maybe you want to renege on your promise. He's like, no, I'm doing it. It's the one thing in my life I'm going to do. And he didn't do it. And he even went back on the deed that he felt would make up for what he did to his first wife, who he still had the nerve to greet with his dying breath when he said, my love. She should have been like, don't you talk to me. It was incredible. It was incredible. So real. If only Alicent had just simply decided not to listen to him, because nobody else was there. There were no other witnesses. She could have just said, F you right back. But I guess she believes in the prophecy or doesn't want to take any chances. I'm not quite sure why she would follow a directive that she's not only does not benefit her, it's very episode. She was like, Egon, you're an idiot. You're no son of mine. But that will hurt her life, her personal life. All right, so speaking of FUs, considering that they are clearly feared by no one, even though that was the whole point of what they did to Laenor, in addition to being able to get married. But they were like, everyone will fear us. I'm like, nobody seems to fear you guys at all. So considering how ineffective that was, I think they should have told Rhaenys a long time ago that her son still lives and is much happier. I mean, I don't know how Rhaenys would have taken the news, but I would have gambled with it. I would have probably done it right there. She would have been really upset, though. She would have been like, what? I'd be like, hey, I think you're focusing on the wrong part, Rhaenys. He's alive. But however, I have to say, the way this situation was handled and how much time has passed, I do worry that Laenor did indeed just sail into the sunset. What a missed opportunity! I think now the only way to maybe bring him back is that Corlys does die, and Laenor can return and fill his role in the books going forward. I would actually like that. But I don't know if it's going to happen. We'll see. How much if Viserys is dead, how come, Corlys, when Viserys sat back in that chair, I was like, that's the chair that killed you. I mean, he just got so much sicker than everybody else. It was incredible. Also, everyone kept touching him and getting really close to him. I was like, how do you know he's not contagious? That looks really bad. All right. Ye old plexiglass or whatever they could get. I guess everything worked out okay between House Targaryen and House Valerian, thanks to the suggestion that Rhaenyra and Daemon's children marry each other. What kind of twisted Birdie Bunch is this? It really is like, not only the parents got married, but the kids on each side got married. What? And Corlys's brother, by the way, he pretty much committed suicide. I mean, Daemon was even like, say it, say it. And I can't believe that guy fell for it. I think that was a sign that he really wasn't meant to rule Driftmark. He was too contentious and, ruled by his emotions from the political perspective. Because he called Rhaenyra and her son some pretty awful names in court, right in front of everyone. I was like, wow. I don't know how you could even, although I knew he was going to be killed, but I did not expect the way it happened. That was incredible. Look at all that's happened to Rhaenys, and yet she still manages to force herself to play the game. I like Rhaenys. I feel bad for those strong boys. That compliment is from the books, by the way, quite clever. Like their father, they seem very kind and honorable men, but totally unable to play the Game of Thrones. Perhaps they are too kind and honorable. Rhaenyra would do good to remind them of what happened to their actual father. She's like, you don't want that to be you, do you? But with this show's decision to make House of Valyrian a black family, it is ridiculous that anyone is trying to pass off those boys as part Valyrian. Couldn't Rhaenyra have found a black man to have an affair with, to have her children with? I think that would have considerably helped her line, her claim of legitimacy, and also, their children's lives. I mean, it's really difficult for these boys because it's just so absurd. And then also, you can see why Corlys's brother would be particularly offended that this white boy is going to take over his family's home and legacy forever. And that his bloodline, he's the one who made that speech about how great the Valyrian bloodline is at Laena's funeral, that will be lost forever. And I have to be honest with you, I think that a lot of audiences would be offended by this as well. Rhaenyra's suggestion kind of fixes the problem, because Laena's daughter and Rhaenys' granddaughter, or Corlys's granddaughter, will help rule Driftmark. So therefore, the true Valyrian bloodline will stay there and continue through their children. But still, as I said in my initial review of this show, if you're going to make House Valyrian black and you want to make sure those viewers feel included in the story, you better treat some of those characters right. And they're just not doing a good enough job. I think the continuous disrespect towards House Valyrian is ridiculous. And I think the show almost doubles down on it because they decided to make that the family of color. As for now, Corlys, if he lives, or maybe Laenor if he comes back, are House Valyrian's last hope for really strong characters. Because Baila and Reyna are sidelined this episode. I would love, we'll talk about them a little bit in a moment. I would love for them to rise up. Just somebody. House Valyrian needs a hero. And this show, I hope, will recognize that. As for Allison, her transformation into Cersei, like really turning into Cersei, is coming along nicely. I knew she was going to do away with that chambermaid almost immediately. I mean, the chambermaid didn't really give her a choice. I guess she could have sent her away, but that was incredible. She got her to drink that tea. That girl drank her own poison, and I don't think that tea was mixed correctly. That was incredible. A classic Cersei move. But the difference is that Alicent's heart isn't in it. She even, as I said, tells Egon he's no son of hers. Cersei never would have done that. She'd be like, I believe that we can turn this around. That was Cersei's slogan till the bitter end. Plus, I think Alicent can see that things aren't going very well. For all the grief that's been caused, what was the point of all of this? Sure, her father temporarily sits on the Iron Throne, but again, what have they accomplished? Considering Otto is played by Rhys Ifans, I'm surprised how little he's had to do since his return. I was like, I thought you were going to come back in a major way. I think the most important thing they had to do, Alicent and Otto, was to raise Egon to be an undeniably great king, who should clearly rule instead of Rhaenyra, and they failed miserably in that department. It's funny, a lot of House of the Dragon Season 1 has been about women trying to do more than just have babies, just produce heirs. And that was a big part of Game of Thrones too. Can a woman sit on the Iron Throne? Yet for all of Alicent and Rhaenyra's hard work and grief, neither have accomplished very much, and neither really comes across as good leaders. Daenerys was a fantastic leader, so it makes what happened to her and how her character was really cut down and destroyed in the final season all the more tragic. But I'd say that Alicent and Rhaenyra are still pawns instead of queens, moved across the board by the men in their lives, older and younger, and that's sort of depressing, quite frankly. But that's where we are in the story right now. At least Messaria has turned into our Littlefinger, right? I think we were supposed to feel that might be Daemon going to see her in that hood, but he's not that thin. He doesn't have that much swagger. I was like, I don't think that's Daemon. But yes, Messaria has her own rats in the castle to tell her what's going on, and I'm curious to see if that storyline goes anywhere. But speaking of rats, Where the heck is Larys Strong? He started his own gang and everything. It's weird to see him missing at such a pivotal time with the king on his deathbed and dies. You'd think he'd definitely be hanging around like a vulture for that situation. And also control of Driftmark and its huge fleet of ships in dispute. These are important decisions, and he wasn't involved in trying to influence them at all. That seemed very out of character to me. All right, let's talk about that family dinner. When Viserys removed his partial face mask, I raised my glass to the VFX team and also pondered how he was still alive with not one but 2 giant holes in his face. I was like, you know what? Those maesters are actually pretty good because you're still able to walk around. I was quite moved this entire episode by Daemon's reaction to seeing his brother like this. Great acting job by Matt Smith as well. You could tell there was still real love there and a feeling of sadness of what was lost and how many years they had fought. And I wish they'd gotten to talk one-on-one before Viserys died, but again, it's very realistic. And Viserys, I think, died knowing his brother loved him. Although, again, considering what Viserys did on his deathbed, did he even really care? I mean, Viserys looked out for number one himself, thank you very much, so at the end of the day. Aegon's behavior is so appalling, at the dinner table no less. I'm like, at the dinner table? That I wish Daemon would unsheath his sword again so that Aemond would be next in line for the throne for the Greens. And that's interesting. At that table, it really was the Greens on one side and the Blacks on the other. Nice. On the side of the Blacks, next in line is, well, it's supposed to be Rhaenyra, but everyone seems to have already moved on to her eldest son, Jacaerys, including Jacaerys. Harry Collette is fantastic. So likable. I can see why, considering what happened to their cousin, Baila and Reyna are delighted to be betrothed to the Strong Boys. Side note, I don't believe that happened in the books, that they were betrothed. So I'm curious to see what House of the Dragon has in store for Baila and Reyna. Their story started out so strong, particularly Reyna, her wish for a dragon. And their mother, Lena, was so interesting, even though we spend a brief time with her. It's, again, as I said, a little disheartening they were sidelined this episode. And I hope they're brought more to the forefront. I hope they truly co-rule with the Strong Boys. And I think the Strong Boys are the kind of guys who would be cool with that, which is why they're so happy to be betrothed to them. But I have to tell you, as nice as he might be, Jacaerys isn't really saying king to me either. Who would I have rule? Well, right now, at this moment, I honestly think that Daemon actually would be the best person to sit on the Iron Throne. I think he's matured, but also mellowed, but not so much that he still can't do what needs to be done. And I thought that great shot of him retrieving the dragon eggs at the beginning of the episode balanced him out nicely. He was a nice guy. You know, I think Daemon is more at peace with himself, finally, after getting at least one of his wishes to marry Rhaenyra and have a family with her. At first, I thought it was nice that they named one of their sons Viserys, and he was so happy about it. But again, I don't really think at the end of the day, or at the end of his life, Viserys cared about anything except making sure that he had a premonition. As for Driftmark, I think Rhaenys actually has a very good head on her shoulders, as she proved. And I think I'm very happy with her in that position. And I do feel a little bit better about Lucerys. I don't have really good feelings about Lucerys either. But I think with Rhaena by his side, they should be a very good team. Finally, I want to tip my hat to the behind-the-scenes talent, particularly writer Eileen Shim and director Greta Vasant Patel. Not just 2 women, but 2 women of color. This is not only one of the best Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon episodes ever, but one of the best hours of entertainment, not just a show, but any movie, etc., that I've ever seen. It was incredibly sophisticated, nuanced, and thrilling, and the camera work was absolutely astounding. Some of my favorite shots, and I'd love to hear yours down below. Rhaenys watching her brother-in-law's body be prepared and thinking about just how bad things were for her. The camera floating into Viserys' bedchambers as he was about to pass away. That was like a dark fairy tale. Shades of Walt Disney's Sleeping Beauty, my favorite of the animated films. I just loved it so much. Also, that whole sequence of Viserys taking the throne was so incredibly done. It was a genuine surprise. It was so emotional. And you had on the edge of your seat. It worked at every level. And on his deathbed, reaching out, the single tear. That's not just Paddy Constantine's work, but also Shin and Patel. For a while now, Hollywood has tried to match talent with subject matter, and that's been great to help women, people of color, and LGBT members get their foot in the door. But I think we're at a point now where we can start graduating to the realization, the truth, that good storytellers can tell any story. I mean, I think it does help to have some to have the perspective of a group there if you're going to do that, but it doesn't have to be everyone on the creative team, just as long as that element's there and is listened to. But I think This is a very important evolution of who works in Hollywood, and that's that talent can tell any story. And this is a prime example of that. Bravo, ladies. You did incredible work. I hope somebody picks you up. The other day, some of you were like, why don't they hire House of the Dragon talent to write and direct some of this Marvel and DC stuff? And I would second that for sure. All right, so those are my thoughts on House of the Dragon, episode 8. Only 2 more to go this season. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.